yeah, we're talking there about the music side of things, but of course, you know, the recessions, the recitations even.
We've had too many recessions.
We're great in the recessions.
The session in the recession. That's the new album.
We put the session in the recession.
That's our new caption. The poetry side, the storytelling side, all of that. I think for you, Ryland, you were saying you were you didn't expect that to be so strong in the culture. You know, when you came over, I remember you going off to these country pubs with my father. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, first of all, I didn't expect to meet a Clancy when I came to the Dublin Theatre Festival in 1996. And as you know, I was predominantly an actor back then. And we were touring with a company called Arad Goch, the Red Plough. We're very left-wing in Wales, you see. And we were performing a show based on an old ancient Welsh myth called Taliesin in the Dublin Theatre Festival. And Roisin had come back. Obviously, you were from Carrick-on-Shore, but you were living in Los Angeles. And I hadn't expected to meet you. And when we talked and our similar backgrounds and traditions and music was a common thread between us. And then when I first came to William Street and I met your family, again, I come back and I reiterate, it was just like stepping into my own home in West Wales, where you have to have something to say, a story or a song, or you might as well get out. Because it's far more than money, it's currency, you know. It's like hearing a new song. And for your father, Bobby Clancy, hearing a new song was a big thing. But also the storytelling and, as you alluded to, the poetry. You know, and when I first went to a pub with Bobby, I couldn't believe how he could change the psychology of a room. And later, when I didn't get to meet Tom, but I met Paddy, knew of kindred spirits, and your father also. I remember seeing your father for the last time when we were privileged enough to perform on the stage that night in the Clancy Brothers Festival. And he was in the middle of a song, I think it was Finnegan's Wake, and he stopped and he started talking to the audience and about crew beans, I think. You know, crew beans.
Oh,
a Welshman shouldn't explain what crew beans are. You probably know, Evan, do you?
Evan will explain
I have
to us
some
now
stories
what crew beans
about
are.
crew beans.
Do you?
Oh, I do. There's a famous story down in Waterford from a band. What was the name of the band?
The Crew Beans?
The Crew Beans. Oh, I don't know. Two good friends of mine, actually, two brothers, and from a great band inside in Waterford called the Butterfly Band. And they were telling me one night they were out for a feed of pints, out drinking all day, and they came home to the parents' house they were living at the time, and in a big pot they found a load of crew beans, and they didn't know any of the difference, so they started eating away. And sure, the next day anyway, didn't their mother get up to cook them? And she didn't know where they were gone.
They had raw crew beans. They were uncooked.
They were uncooked.
Like sushi or something.
And crew beans are bad enough when they're cooked. I mean, you barely find a slither of meat in there.
Haven't had them in a while.
I remember hearing one from Anne Mooney there. I think it was her mother, your grandmother.
Tessie.
Yeah. Some fella came into the pub, some stranger. I think he might have been around in the area working on a farm or something. And he looked very hungry. So she had some old crew beans in the fridge. If they even had a fridge at that time, maybe not. But she said, would you eat a few crew beans?
Oh, well, no, you see, they had a pub, so I'd say they might have had a fridge.
He said, I would. By God, I'd eat some crew beans. And she brought out the crew beans to him, and she went away off about her business, cleaning up or whatever. And she came back and there's nothing on the plate. Usually with a crew bean, there'd be lots of skin and knuckles and cartilage and all sorts of bones. And she said, where are all the bones? He said, oh, there are no bones, ma'am. He said, no bones.
This is exactly how it was in the Clancy Brothers Festival when I met your father. It's like a bit like Billy Connolly, you know, you can go off on a tangent in a story and then you come back to it. And your father did that, and he was talking to the audience about crew beans and how nice they were, you know, at the end of a night after a feed of drink. And then he started then he went into a poem. And somehow he found a segue back into Finnegan's Wake. And I was in the wings, especially being from an acting background. I thought, I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen people who could go and bend songs into poems or stories. And your father was the same. You know, I remember one night, we're here in County Waterford now, in the Dacian Ring, and we didn't leave the house here till 10 o'clock that night. And Bobby took me out to some pub. I think it was an Abbey side, the other side of Dungarvan, somewhere like, I can't remember the name of it.
Alice O'Connor's, I bet.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's one of those places I'd a vague memory of the door and no memory of leaving. But we went there because we'd tried a few other pubs first, but Bobby would, he wouldn't play in any.
He was very
pub.
particular.
Very particular. You go, and if there was a lot of noise, he'd say, too much rah, rah, rah. And we'd be out the back door and then into the next place. And then we'd stumble upon, I say stumble, but he knew what he was doing, go into this pub. And there was a few old fellas, they're drinking deep and silent, with their caps down, looking up and sort of knowing who Bobby was. And then when the temperature of the barometer was bang on, Bobby would say, go and get the machines. Which meant, of course, the instruments in the car. And by the time I'd come back with the guitar and the banjo and the mandolin maybe, he was straight into some poem. And it was Yeats. And this is what amazed me always was they could pick highbrow material and make it accessible to everybody, because everybody in the pub had just started. The old men were melting and everyone was people were looking around doors and the whole place was starting to change. And that made a huge impact on me. And that was, I think, the host of the air, W.B. Yeats. And I think what I did, I went back home then and I started learning it.
Well, give us a bit of it then.
Nice little segue there. O'Driscoll drove with a song the wild duck and the drake from the tall and tufted reeds of the Drearheart Lake. And he saw how the reeds grew dark at the coming of night tide, and dreamed of the long dim hair of Bridget, his bride. He heard as he sang and dreamed a piper piping away, and never was piping so sad, and never was piping so gay. And he saw young men and young girls who danced on a level place, and Bridget his bride among them with a sad and a gay face. The dancers crowded about him and many a sweet thing said, and a young man brought him red wine and a young girl white bread. But Bridget drew him by the sleeve, away from the merry bands, to old men playing at cards, with a twinkling of ancient hands. The bread and the wine had a doom, for these were the host of the air. He sat and he played in a dream of her long, dim hair. He played with the merry old bands and thought not of evil chance, until one bore Bridget his bride away from the merry dance. He bore her away in his arms, the handsomest young man there, and his neck and his breast and his arms were drowned in her long, dim hair. O'Driscoll scattered the cards, and out of his dream awoke. Young girls and young men and old men were gone, like a drifting smoke. But he heard, high up in the air, a piper piping away, and never was piping so sad, and never was piping so gay. Shinwill.
I didn't know you could play one of them.
This is what I've been doing in lockdown.
That brought me back to one of the old pubs, Tullahocht, or these pubs outside of Carrick, the Slate Quarries, and do you remember those pubs? Did you get your training in any of those?
Oh,
pubs?
I did. I got them in plenty.
And I mean
of 'em
musically now.
a bit of training in every sense of the word. Yeah, yeah. No.
You were saying there, Evan, you were talking about your influences and musically around you in Carrick and beyond, that there was with loads of encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one guy in particular as well, Martin Murray, who would have been a huge influence on me and took me under his wing for a while and introduced me to some amazing music from the area. Really, one that comes to mind would be the Flanigan Brothers.
Yeah, they were back in the
early 1920s over in America.
and they emigrated.
They emigrated from Waterford. Yeah. I think their dad worked on the docks down there, and they would have been. I think they married over there and had one child, and then came back, and all the sons were born there in Waterford. There was Joe, Mike, and Lou.
But so that wasn't so much folk singing as the playing.
More
was that?
playing, yeah. And it was why it really interests me so much is because for the banjo playing, it wasn't a thing even played in Irish music at the time. When they went over, they kind of set up their own unique sound of like backing tunes on the banjo, which really isn't even done today. Like, it's more as a melody instrument. And
so they picked that up when they went over there.
They went over there and they became huge in the dance halls over in New York. Yeah, back in 1920s and 30s. And
so is that kind of the vaudeville era?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the first recordings there's a lot of actually recordings they've done now as well that you can find. And yeah, it's total different vibe now to what we would usually,
So they're influential in the beginnings of vaudeville then, I presume?
Yeah, and even introducing the guitar. The guitar wasn't used as
Really?
in Irish music back then either. And
It's funny, they came up with a lot of it out of necessity because there was no amplification at the time. So if you're playing in a dance hall, the banjo obviously has punch and volume and the accordion. So that's how they started using these instruments just for that reason alone.
Just for
and
noise.
they created almost their own tradition then.
Yeah.
That people are still so influenced by it.
I love that because I remember talking to someone about the tradition of sean-nós in the time of when it was almost like journalism. It was a big long story because before people had money to buy fiddles, and it was the voice that carried, and through folk song. I remember your father saying about folk songs like "The Rocks Are Born" and the stuff you don't find in history books. And in Wales we'd have the same with our folk songs, the stuff of the nitty gritty, the in between the lines of the life of the common folk. But back to New York, sorry, Evan.
I know, yeah.
You do a tune in the show of Flanigan Brothers.
Yeah, to do a tune that it was taught to me again by Martin. We played a long time ago, and at the time I backed him on the banjo and he played the melody, and there was a great player, box player PJ King as well. Good times, but yeah, it's just a nice old just jump out of the.
Let the music do the talking.
Where's the banjo? Oh, you'll hear it in a minute.
But Carrick is a really amazing town for talent. The whole of Ireland is. But that's another thing. I met you for the first time, Evan. I think it was in your father's funeral, Roisin, at Bobby's funeral. We were playing in Cleggs, and you were playing the Mason's Apron or something. I remember being in awe. But Carrick is very rich in culture and music.
You must have been under the influence of something there now.
It's the only time I pay you. So the only time I pay you a compliment.
Under the influence. Yes, we do an old song that we do in the show. Yeah.
Which one should we do?
The Rare Old Mountain Dew, and
Lovely.
try an old vibe with the old Flanagans on it.
Nice.
Indeed.
Can you whistle? the free and easy way. But give me enough of the final stuff that's brewed near Galway Bay. And please when all from Donegal, Sligo needs from two. We'll give them a slip and take a sip at the rare old Mountain Dew. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, lad comes to you, right dilly egg day. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, lad comes to you, right dilly egg day. At the foot of the hill there's a neat little still where the smoke curls up to the sky. By the smoke and the smell you can plainly tell there's poaching brewing nearby. It fills the air with all the rare betwixt both me and you. Take off your coat and raise your throat at the rare old Mountain Dew. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes to you, right dilly egg day. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes to you, right dilly egg day. Now learned men who use the pen have wrote your praises high. That sweet poaching of Ireland's green is still from wheat and rye. Throw away your pills and your old lids, be a pagan, a Christian, a Jew. Take off your coat and raise your throat at the rare old Mountain Dew. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes to you, right dilly egg day. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes to you, right dilly egg day. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes to you, right dilly egg day. Hi, the dilly egg comes to you, that comes with the shoe. Right dilly egg day. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was under the influence a bit there myself there now. Repeating words and
Good old Flanigan Brothers.
yeah, no, that's a
Had
great
some
old
vibe
tune.
to them, didn't
Tune
they?
there, boy heck. That was
Is that what it's called?
boy heck, yeah, boy heck.
How did they come up with that one?
I don't know. I don't know how Martin Murray showed it to me either. Great man.
Some tune.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, here we are in the day show. We've been talking about Carrick on Shore and kind of where it all started, kind of thing. But of course, we're filming today, not the most, sunniest of summer days as it goes. But we're in the Daisha, and we all happen to be, well, three out of four of us happen to be living in Unrhyne, County Waterford now. This is the odd man out here.
Well, I stuck to Tipperary.
I thought you were the Kilkenny cat.
Oh, listen.
He changed
It's
his
another
royalties
bone
by
of
the day.
contention there now. Herself reminded me that I've actually lived more of my life in Tipperary. Yeah,
One, two.
I would have lived in Carrick up to the age of 7, then moved to Piltown out in Kilkenny, and sure, the other half brought me back to Tipperary, and I've been there, nearly 20 years, so yeah.
I've actually been living here in the Daisha now we moved over, 10 years ago this month. Incredible. And I do find myself automatically saying things like, go away now. Like I did there.
What does that
Way
mean
out of
now?
that.
Oh, go away. Come here to me. Go away.
Here to me, go away. Wait till I tell you. But it's funny how that kind of came about. I think again it was Bobby and Liam back in the day. I think collecting songs or collecting drinks, collecting something anyway, bit of both maybe. But they went around all these country pubs, and my father had been down in this area in Ring. and he came across this little thatch pub, and Liam had come along with him. Do you know this story, this occasion? How your father first came to Ring? Do you remember that?
I think he first came. Kieran Burke of the Dubliners used to come here to learn Irish. I think he used to spend time down at the Colostra, or the Irish college down there. So he asked him to come along one time. There's a pub down there and they'd have a bit of crack. And I think the first time he came, I remember my father saying they slept down in the college and down in what's the Tig Dove.
Oh, yeah.
And they rolled up there's all these rugs in there, and they used to roll up in the rug, and that was the bed. That was the bed for the night.
Their cot. So he was young then?
That would have been early 60s, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I have the story a bit different, but that's the way it goes.
This is how it goes with Clancy stories. I have it.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. But they arrived in, one way or the other, they arrived into Mooney's pub, which was a little thatch kind of, it was more or less in the middle of the road as we know the road now. I think, years after that, then it was demolished, and of course they built a bigger pub. But at that point, they were quite known. They were known already in the States and back in Ireland, and they were played on the radio a lot. So they were quite famous at that point. And I think they arrived in, and they were all excited. God, the Clancy Brothers are outside, and we're going to have a few tunes, and packing everyone in, and all the rest of it. And there was six daughters. My mother being one of them. Of course, the rest is history then. But
simple equation.
That kind of started it all. And I think, my father never, although we spent all our summers here, but we the house in Carrick, the house that his parents, where he grew up, but we spent all our summers down here. And you at the time were living in the States, and Tom and his family were in California. You were in New Hampshire, weren't you? In Dover, New Hampshire, and you come back every summer. Yeah. And now I have a few years on you, so you were a young fella at that point. Little snotty-nosed Yank.
We had been coming over every year since I was born. We'd spend the whole, the 2 or 3 months during the summer.
Yeah.
Would be spent, I think, as soon as the day school ended, we'd be on the flight that night, and we wouldn't go back till the day before the school reopened.
There was great freedom there, wasn't there? Just the roaming, you spend the days on the beach, and kind of just there was great freedom. And then the parents would be in the pub at night having a session, and you might be sitting outside waiting for them to come home.
The bottle of 7-Up and the bag of crisps. Eating Tato all day. Waiting to... But you'd have fun, the kids would have great fun out running around and coming up with their own little games and things to be doing.
Yeah. And I'd say the songs became popular here as well, so the repertoire belonged to everybody.
You're hearing all the music in the background and sinking in. That's how you learn it. It's like learning a language. Yeah. And then you're just exposed to it and it sinks in.
That's it. And then at the end of the night, you'd know when things are winding down, or when it was essentially over, when they'd sing the national anthem. Do you remember that?
We did that in Wales as well.
Yeah, they still do it. That has to be done.
Yeah, but that's not done anymore, is it?
No.
You were at the end of the night. Do you remember that? They'd stand up and sing the national anthem at the end of the night. And then as a kid, you'd know, finally, we're going home, kind of thing. But
what's the song that sticks in your mind from childhood then? Well, we might finish on this, actually.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking, I suppose, that towards the end of every session, there'd be Go Lassie Go, wouldn't there? That's the song for me that reminds me of those kind of...
The summertime is coming.
Exactly, and all that. Yeah, those days.
And the summer seemed warmer, didn't they? And brighter and sunnier. And
the herring are not on the tide, as they were of old, my sorrow. For many's a creek gave the creel in the cart that carried the take to Sligo town to be sold when I was a boy, with never a crack in my heart. Yeah.
Lovely.
Another Yeats, is it? Should we finish up on
Go Lassie?
The old favourite then?
Okay. Oh, the summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to the wild mountain tide, all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? I will build my love a bower near yon pure crystal fountain, and on it I will pile all the flowers of the mountain. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme, all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go?
If my true love be gone, I would surely find another where the wild mountain tide rolls around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go?
And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme, all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Oh, the summer time is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme, all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go?
There we go.
Lovely.
And the price of cabbage.
And your friends in Callanby.
Well, I look forward to doing this again. What do you think, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll give it a lash again. Yeah, hope to see you at the next Clancy's Kitchen. That's it for today. Take care. God bless. You are.
You are. Well,